If you're following our Global Economic Outlook series, hit subscribe to stay updated with new country releases. In the second quarter of 2025, Japan's economy demonstrated notable stability, characterized by moderate growth, steady labor conditions, controlled inflation, low interest rates, and persistent fiscal challenges. These dynamics reflect the resilience of Japan's highly developed economy amid global uncertainties. The GDP annual growth rate held steady in Q2 2025. Real GDP expanded by approximately 1.2% year-on-year, easing from 1.8% in the previous quarter. On a quarter-on-quarter basis, the economy grew by 0.3%, marking the fifth consecutive quarter of expansion. Unemployment remained low. The jobless rate hovered at 2.5% in June 2025, unchanged from the previous month and consistent with the persistently tight labor market. Throughout the year, such stability in unemployment levels indicates continued labor utilization across industries. Interest rates remained exceptionally low. The Bank of Japan maintained its key policy rate at 0.5% in July 2025, reflecting its cautious stance and continued reliance on accommodative policy to support growth. Rate levels remain near historic lows, reflective of Japan's monetary strategy. Inflation moderated but remained above the central bank's 2% target. Headline CPI inflation eased to 3.3% in June 2025, down from 3.5% in May, marking the lowest readings in several months. Core inflation, excluding volatile components, matched this figure at 3.3%. The debt-to-GDP ratio continued at elevated levels. At the end of March 2025, Japan's general government gross debt reached approximately 235% of GDP, one of the highest levels among advanced economies. Low interest rates have kept debt servicing costs manageable. To summarize key macro indicators for Q2 2025, GDP growth approximately 1.2% year-on-year, approximately 0.3% quarter-on-quarter, unemployment approximately 2.5% steady, interest rate 0.5% maintained, inflation approximately 3.3% headline and core, debt to GDP approximately 235% persistently high. These figures illustrate an economy that is stable yet constrained. Growth is fragile, labor markets remain tight, inflation shows signs of cooling, and fiscal risk remains elevated. Drivers underpinning this stability include export resilience, particularly in automobiles and capital goods, supports GDP despite global trade tensions. Domestic consumption and investment remain modestly positive, contributing to buffer against external shocks. Wage growth, though subdued, helps sustain domestic demand. Low-interest policy continues to encourage borrowing and investment at the margins despite limited room for rate cuts. However, challenges and structural concerns persist. External pressures, U.S. tariffs on Japanese imports raise uncertainty, and global demand softness threatens export momentum. Persistent inflation above target constrains the BOJ's ability to normalize policy. Fiscal vulnerability due to extremely high debt limits fiscal stimulus options and raises risks. From demographic pressures, demographic decline and aging reduce domestic growth potential and tax revenue base. Policy considerations to reinforce stability, monitor inflation closely, particularly in energy and wages, and adjust guidance to reinforce expectations around right-time normalization. Promote growth through structural reform, including labor market flexibility, innovation, and digital economy investment. Manage fiscal exposure, prioritizing quality investments, while improving revenue efficiency. Support export diversification, reducing reliance on sensitive sectors and markets. If these measures are implemented steadily, Japan could maintain modest growth around 1 to 2%, keep unemployment near 2.5%, allow inflation to converge toward 2%, and stabilize fiscal health despite high debt. In conclusion, in Q2 2025, Japan's economy exhibited stability, sustained growth, tight but steady labor conditions, manageable inflation, ultra-low interest rates, and high debt. While short-term resilience is evident, long-term strength depends on addressing structural challenges, revitalizing productivity, and restoring fiscal flexibility. In an evolving global landscape, Japan's economic future requires strategic adaptation. Comprehensive monitoring and strategic implementation will determine Japan's economic trajectory. Through the challenges ahead, success depends on coordinated policy execution and adaptive economic management. Case Study 1. Japan's automotive sector demonstrates export resilience through global supply chain adaptation and technological innovation. Despite trade tensions, automotive exports maintained steady growth, contributing significantly to GDP stability. Strategic market diversification and hybrid technology leadership enabled sustained competitiveness in international markets. Case Study 2. Japan's labor market maintained exceptional stability through flexible employment practices and skills development programs. Continuous workforce adaptation and government-industry collaboration sustained low unemployment rates despite economic uncertainties. Investment in human capital and employment flexibility created resilient labor market conditions supporting overall economic stability. Case Study 3. The Bank of Japan's accommodative monetary policy successfully balanced growth support with inflation management. Maintaining ultra-low interest rates encouraged business investment and consumer spending while managing inflationary pressures. Strategic policy communication and gradual adjustment approach maintained market confidence and economic stability. Japan's technology sector continued driving economic growth through artificial intelligence and robotics advancement. Innovation investment and digital transformation initiatives supported productivity growth and export competitiveness. Entrepreneurial ecosystem development and venture capital investment fostered technological innovation and economic dynamism. Japan's financial sector maintained stability through prudent risk management and regulatory compliance. Strong capital ratios and conservative lending practices supported financial system resilience during economic uncertainties. Effective supervision and stress testing ensured banking sector contribution to overall economic stability. Consumer spending patterns reflected cautious optimism, with selective purchasing behavior supporting domestic demand. Digital commerce growth and omni-channel retail strategies adapted to changing consumer preferences and economic conditions. Consumer confidence surveys indicated measured optimism supporting sustained domestic economic activity. Analyzing Japan's Q2 2025 economic performance reveals interconnected patterns of stability, resilience, and structural challenges requiring strategic attention. The stability triangle of moderate growth, low unemployment, and controlled inflation demonstrates Japan's economic management effectiveness. However, underlying structural vulnerabilities including high debt levels and demographic pressures require long-term strategic solutions. The balance between economic resilience and structural risks defines Japan's current economic position and future trajectory. External trade dependencies, fiscal constraints, and demographic transitions represent key vulnerability areas requiring policy attention. Leveraging technological innovation, export competitiveness, and financial stability can amplify Japan's economic strengths. Effective policy integration across monetary, fiscal, and structural dimensions is essential for sustained economic stability and growth. Coordinated policy implementation and adaptive management approaches can address both immediate stability needs and long-term structural challenges. Strategic policy sequencing and timing optimization will determine the success of Japan's economic transformation efforts. Scenario planning reveals multiple potential pathways for Japan's economic future, each requiring different policy responses and strategic adaptations. The optimal trajectory involves gradual fiscal consolidation, productivity enhancement, and demographic adaptation while maintaining economic stability. Success probability analysis indicates that comprehensive reform implementation significantly improves long-term economic sustainability prospects. Japan's Q2 2025 economic performance demonstrates stability amid challenges, requiring strategic policy implementation for sustained prosperity. For more data-driven insights and global market breakdowns, subscribe and turn on notifications. Stay informed, stay ahead. This is Economics FX, where clarity meets strategy. Until next time, trade smart.